Welcome to the ISO Show, dispelling myths and sharing tips for success to improve your business with ISO standards, with your host, Mel Blackmore.
Hello and welcome to the ISO Show. In the last episode of the ISO 9001 Steps to Success series, Rachel Churchman, managing consultant from Blackmores, explained how to get started with implementing ISO 9001. And she included some great tips on things like how to carry out a gap analysis and methods for understanding how businesses can identify their risks and opportunities so that they could then create things like business objectives and possibly a risk register. So I'm delighted to welcome back Rachel for episode 2 to talk us through the next steps, which is all about creating and launching your quality management system. Welcome back, Rachel.
Hi, thanks for having me back, Mel.
Okay, so if we pick up where we left off, so we've got our ISO champions, and we've still got that gap analysis report with all our actions, and we've got a better understanding of risks and opportunities. Where do we go from here in terms of trying to document the quality management system?
Okay, so we would first of all speak to our champions who, as you remember, we've got from different areas of the business. And we'd be looking to understand what needs to be documented and formalised in terms of procedures for the business. And we would work with the departments. We need to involve the people who are actually doing the work to understand how the process flows. How we document those for a business can vary. So, for instance, it could be a very high-level flowchart, which is a very easy and visual way to understand a process on a sheet of paper. Or it might be that there might be some more technical elements and the business might want a technical written process. But to bring all of these processes together and to enable the business to understand how the management system works is we would typically have a document, or it could be a wiki, a page on an intranet that kind of describes what the management system is, what it's all about, and the main components and where to go and find those main components. So traditionally this may have been a quality manual. I think a lot of people who have worked with companies who have quality can remember a big heavy quality manual. Thankfully we are now moving away from big chunky manuals, and we are keeping that high level document to very much just an overview of the management system and what the requirements are and where to find information. So this can be called a definition document if you like. Some companies still like that to be in a manual form. Some companies will display that on an intranet. Some companies, I've seen them with like little sort of, almost individual type cards that explain a management system that people can have on them and keep with them. And I've actually seen those being taken to other organisations as well. So there's different ways of defining and pulling together a management system.
So I guess it depends on the business, doesn't it? On the type of business and the culture.
Yeah, how they work.
How they communicate.
Exactly.
Okay, lovely. So if, for example, you had a warehouse and employees within the warehouse didn't have access to a computer to have access to those servers, wikis, intranets, when you document a procedure, how can you make that available to them?
So a very easy way would be to have the procedure or the flowchart, however it's documented, printed out, laminated, and then put at point of use. So, for instance, in a manufacturing environment where perhaps you've got machinery or there's some quality control requirements that need to be strictly applied, you print it out and you'd have it there where you need it. So next to the machinery or on the wall in that quality control area or the quarantine area, whatever it is that you're looking to control. You do also have to be mindful of language as well, because in those types of environments there might be different cultures, different different workers in there, so you need to take that into consideration as well, because the management system needs to be available and understood by all in the organisation.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Rachel. I mean, they say that a picture can speak 1,000 words, and I can remember a few years ago when we had a project with the NHS. This was an environmental management system, and we actually had photographs of the different coloured bins and then photographs of what type of waste should go into those bins, and it's just so much clearer and easier to be able to understand. You didn't have to read anything, you just saw the picture and then you just knew. So I think that's a really good point, that English may not be the first language in that particular work environment, so you need to accommodate for that as well, don't you?
Yes, definitely, yeah.
So with ISO 9001, some people might think that you need to have procedures for absolutely everything. Is that the case?
No, not at all. The standard itself is moving away from bureaucracy and reams of procedures and policies and work instructions. It talks about documented information. So documented information can encompass, as I said in the last episode, software, databases, CRM applications that you're using. They have inbuilt control and workflows that control how information is gathered and used and communicated within a business. And there's no requirement to have a policy or a procedure that lays out what that piece of software is already doing. You also take a risk-based approach. So if you've not identified any significant risks in an area, then you need to consider whether there's actually a requirement for a policy or a procedure in that area. If people know what they're doing, it's well known, it's understood by all, there's no risk, there's no issues, there's no history or legacy of any issues in that area, chances are it doesn't require a formal procedure to put in place.
Okay, now I think that's a really good point. So identify where the main risks are, because that's where you need the quality control, that's where you need the procedures, and that's where you need to communicate it. Okay, that's brilliant, thank you. So just bearing in mind, if we're creating these policies and procedures, what sort of procedures would an assessor be typically looking for then?
So an assessor at the outset, so stage one, if you like, of the certification process, the assessor is looking to be able to see a management system documented to a level that's commensurate with the risk of the business. So if it's a very simple business, they're not going to be expecting to see hundreds of procedures in place. They are going to be wanting to see something that describes how the management system is pulled together, who is responsible for it, so they need to get an understanding of that leadership, that management, the key roles and responsibilities within that management system. There's very few procedures now that have to be documented within a management system, but you need to have processes in place. So things like management review, internal auditing, corrective action, but you don't necessarily have to have a procedure for it. It might be that you just need to demonstrate how that happens within a business.
Okay, great. So we've now documented, we've created the quality management system. Who typically approves it before the big launch?
So absolutely, process owners need to be happy and comfortable with anything that's been implemented in their area. But senior management, they do need to approve the management system, because ultimately they're the ones who are accountable for it. They're responsible for it, working within the business. They're providing the resources and the support. So they need to be aware of it, they need to be aware of their role within that management system, and they need to approve the fundamental policies, if you like, that support that management system.
So you're mentioning about management system and quality management system. Does a company have to call it a QMS or a management system? Because I know that you mentioned that we don't have to have a quality manual anymore. What's the deal then when it comes to branding or just what we actually call this thing?
You can call it what you like. You can, there's no requirement to call it a quality management system. So I've had companies that will call it a business management system or a BMS. Companies that might have more than one ISO standard or who have aspirations to grow their management system might call it a company management system, a CMS, or an integrated management system, because they might integrate it into other processes and systems they have in place. There's nothing in the standard that says you have to call it a quality management system. Call it what you like.
Okay, excellent. So we've documented the quality management system, or whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to rebrand it as. We've got it approved, and now it's launch time. So could you give us some hints and tips on how to best do that? Because obviously quite a lot of time and effort's been put into this thing to date, but you don't want it just sitting on the shelf and gathering dust or sitting up in the clouds somewhere. You need to get it out there, don't you? What hints and tips would you give to businesses to launch this quality management system?
Okay, so fundamentally, the management system relies on the business, and the business is made up of people. So, you need to communicate its existence within the business. So when you launch the management system, you need to be promoting it to everyone in the business at all levels. So not just the management team, not just lower level managers. It needs to go right through to shop floor and even to key suppliers. Depending on the risk you have associated with external parties, they need to be aware of where they sit in your management system as well. So typically we would arrange to have some awareness sessions with the business. So that could be small sessions with people from different departments. It could be a company-wide launch, so you might have an all-company event where we're launching it to the whole company at the same time, so they're all getting the same message at the same time. And key to that awareness is not just letting them know, oh, we've got a quality management system. It's making sure they understand the part that they have to play in that management system.
Yeah.
Because objectives don't sit at one level, they do filter down to everyone.
So if we've got remote workers, or we might have, drivers, so it could be a logistics company, and we've got drivers that are out on the road all the time, how do we communicate the management system to them? So obviously a good way of being able to share information is by email, and ideally doing maybe a lunch and learn or something like that. But how do we get remote workers involved with the launch?
So I have had experience of different remote workers. There are different ways you can communicate. As you say, traditionally you can email information. If we're doing any kind of presentations, they can be emailed. They can be put online. Some companies may use e-learning as a way to promote awareness of the management system and policies and procedures. So you could go old school even. You could kill a tree and print out key policies, procedures and awareness handouts to staff. There's lots of different ways that you can communicate with remote workers. I've lost count of the amount of times I've been videoed delivering awareness training, because that video can then be emailed and sent to people all over the world to communicate awareness for a management system. It's just thinking out of the box. How do we normally communicate with these members of staff? What's their preferred, weapon of communication? And we make sure that we tailor our awareness training to incorporate that, so it's not something new to them, it's something that they're used to receiving.
Yeah, so it's whatever's effective, really, for that business environment. I like the thing that you mentioned about videoing of delivering awareness training or inductions. And because it's a sustainable way, isn't it? And it's repeatable.
It is,
Yeah, it's environmentally friendly. No, I really like that one. Thank you. Great, so that's a wrap for today. So we've covered how the QMS has been successfully launched now. And our final episode is coming up, episode 3, on the ISO 9001 Steps to Success podcast, where Rachel will dive into the final stages, which covers implementation and compliance. So that's getting you ready just before the ISO 9001 assessment. So thanks very much for sharing those little gems of information with us today, Rachel. If you'd like further information on how to implement ISO 9001, this information is freely available on our website. If you go into www.blackmoresuk.com, it's all there on the ISO 9001 Steps to Success. So until the next time, we look forward to catching you on the next ISO show.